every person has to make a real concerted effort to be known. You must be vulnerable with the other person. In order for me to trust you, you need to show trust. And that is not easy. Sometimes as managers, we think we're this, I don't know, superhuman. But people want to know that we're all the same. We're all the same.
Hello and welcome to Love as a Business Strategy, a podcast that brings humanity to the workplace. We're here to talk about business, but we want to tackle topics that most business leaders shy away from. And we believe that humanity and love should be at the center of every successful business. I am your host, as always, Jeff Ma, and I'm here to have those conversations with real people in the real world around real business and see where love might fit into that equation. And my guest today is the Chief Operating Officer at Amegy Bank, Diane Maben. And in this role, she manages corporate communication, marketing, product implementation, service and quality management, and other operational and risk functions on top of directly supporting in the bank's strategic initiatives and communication. She also currently serves on the board of Provision Inc. and is a volunteer with United Way of Greater Houston and the NAACP Act. So amongst many other things she does, I don't want to spoil it all because I want to have the actual conversation about her. I'm very excited because I've had the pleasure of meeting her earlier at the end of last year. And I just think she's one of the most incredible humans. So I've invited her on this show because I wanted to dig into this conversation. And so, Diane, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here.
You know, I am happy to be here. I am honored someone wants to hear my story because I don't feel like I have a real story to tell, but I'm always talking. So there must be something going on around me.
I used to say the same thing, that I don't have a story to tell until someone asks. So here we are asking, and I'm hoping to get more of your story out here for everyone to learn from and experience. And I want to kick that off with a very simple question, which is, what are you passionate about?
Wow, that one is very easy. I'm very passionate about people. I'm passionate about the caring and feeding of people. And the more I engage with the world, listen to the news, the more passionate I become about it. Because until we learn to care about each other, we're not going to be able to change anything. Nothing will change, because I think everything starts with real, sincere caring.
And how does that play out for you in your life?
One is exhausting, let me tell you. For me, it is every single engagement with anyone is important to me. I take the time to listen to anyone that needs a moment, because life is lived in moments. It's not lived in hours, it's not days. Life is in the moment. And if at a critical moment someone needs your attention, you just need to stop, even if you have to say, can I get back to you? Because everybody wants to know that they're cared about. So for me, it is actually stopping whenever I feel a need or sense that someone has something they feel like they need to share or say. And I'm a huge family. I have 9 siblings. So a lot of talking across that escape, because they're always sharing. And I have a great staff of people and friends. And part of that is I know that they are aware that I care for them. And I want them to always know that I will show up for them anytime they need me. And my expectation is that they will show up for me.
I love it. And, one thing that I really want to hear more about is your story. You are a Black female leader, Chief Operating Officer at Amegy Bank, large organization. And you're very, very successful, but I know there's a journey to get to that point. And, not to harp on the Black or the female part, but there's a lot of respect I have for what it must have taken and the obstacles that you overcome to achieve what you have today. And I really was hoping you could share a little bit more, maybe take us back in time about and kind of walk us through a little bit of your journey here?
One thing that most people, I mean, I don't think about every day when I get up that I'm a Black person or that I'm a woman. I'm a person. I
Sure.
get up every day. I'm just a person doing what I do. And even as a young kid, it was always just being a person. But I had the most incredible parents on the planet. We were poor. I didn't realize how poor until my sophomore year in college when I had an opportunity to see my father's tax return. My father was raising 10 kids on $18,000 a year.
Mm.
And I never lacked for a single thing. I never knew I was poor until I actually arrived at Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts, where everybody had been to Europe. They played polo, they'd been swimming, they'd done all these things that I didn't know people did every day as a form of recreation. Because in my life, it was getting up, going to school. We played, but you played outside in the backyard. We didn't take trips. And I didn't experience prejudice until the first time I set foot on the campus of Smith College. So I wasn't aware of the prejudices in life. My dad shielded us from all of that. So Smith was predominantly white. Almost no one looked like me. And every Thursday, they had these cool white linen nights where dinner was served in your dining room, and parents came and had dinner with their kids. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, poor. My parents never showed up, but I had an opportunity to dine with others, but you still had to take your dishes back to the kitchen when you were done. And I remember being in the kitchen, and a parent walked in and said to me, must be really great to work here.
Mm.
And it was not said out of malice or to do harm. It was just the expectation that if I was on that campus, I must be working there. There was no way that I could be a student. And I thought, well, maybe that's what prejudice is, people prejudging. But I never really experienced some of the hate that I hear about or that I've seen, or the stories when you tell the stories of others who suffered that way. So it was just understanding at that moment there was a real difference. And then my dad said before I left to go off to school, they will be different. It will be different there. But you need to understand everyone wants to understand you, and you would like to understand them. So be willing to share about yourself as best you can. That was the best advice I could have been given. So it was going from an environment where absolutely everyone looked like me to an environment where almost no one looked like me, and understanding that I was still me. Nothing changed. I was still me. And I always thank my parents for really sort of marinating me in love for 18 years. I wish every kid could have experienced the love of my parents, because that love protected me from so many things. But then entering the work world, people just sort of gravitate toward me. Even that today, even as a kid, I have an interesting pull. People trust me without knowing why they trust me. They invite me into their spaces without knowing why they've invited me in. They listen to me, even though they wish they had not asked that specific question. So I can't tell you, I don't have a hard story. I have little moments where reality cracked open and I had to make a decision. I remember in my job and working, and I was a product manager. And when they decided to hire a manager for the team, even though I'd been doing the job for a while, decided to hire a headhunter to find someone to run the team. And I kept thinking, well, why not me? So I got the courage to ask, why not me? I've been doing it. And the answer was, you don't have enough experience. I was like, okay, it's kind of true. It's my first product management job, but I've been doing it and doing it successfully. But it was not offered the immediate opportunity to take it on. And I would wonder, had I been not me, dressed in this uniform, would I have been offered the opportunity?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to decide, what's my next action? Because in every single thing you do, you have a next action. I learned that also from my father. You have a next action. You must always take the ball back. So the ball was in my court. And what did I do with that? So I had to go and say, okay, I get it. So will you compensate me for this interim time? Because well, I just want to be paid for the time I did do the job, and I'm willing to step back. And he thought about it, and I did get a bonus. And at the end, they hired a new person. The person didn't work, and I got the job. Another opportunity, my work was actually thrown in the trash in front of my face. And like, what do you do with that? Why would someone throw your work away? I worked really hard. I quit the job and went home, and they called me to come back. And it was another opportunity for me to let me square this up a little bit. Yes, I will come back, but be clear, I will sue you if this ever happens again. I think it was just all because my parents were always very outspoken. So I've always felt like I could say what needed to be said when I needed to say it, because my parents were always there to catch me. So the moment when I lost my mother, my dad died first, my mom died, I felt shaken. So the thing that kept me grounded and feeling safe was no longer there. It was my parents, that if I fell now, they would catch me. If something was broken, they would put me back together. So it was unsettling for a while, because the one thing I would say to you, I never thought I would say to someone, that I had a parent that was murdered. Like, wow, that was not supposed to be in my life story. Then later I had a brother who was drug addicted. This started to sound cliche to me. I was becoming the Black American cliche. My story started to look like that because my mother died a violent death. My brother turned to drugs. And what does that mean about me? And the truth is, it didn't define me at all. It helped me to better understand how strong I had been taught to be and how strong I am, and that I can recover. So everything I do is based on those things. I don't walk around thinking about this covering, because this covering, this skin, helps me to experience life. It helps you to experience me, and vice versa. Because without some basis to deal with, we don't know how to experience each other. So that's, to me, it's temporary. I am not this wrapping. This is how you get to meet me first and determine how we'll interact with each other. So it was a lot of learning through that. That makes sense?
Yeah, and I really appreciate you sharing that story, that context and that background. It clicks a lot for me, because the day I met you, I remember one of the things that stood out to me immediately was your voice. And I don't mean the quality and the tone of your voice, but it's how you used it. It's how you joked with it and how you asserted yourself in the conversation. And I always felt that there was so much power behind that. And hearing your story, I see that it wasn't necessarily just power given to you, but it's power that you learned to wield through that foundation that your parents gave you. And that's incredible, because that's your superpower as far as I'm concerned. Every time I've worked with you or talked to you, that you command respect and attention without force. And I love that about you. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, I command attention. I'm going to write that down somewhere so that when I'm feeling that, weak moment, I didn't say, Jeff said, I command attention.
And I mean it. I absolutely mean it.
You know what? That is kind. Thank you.
Well, I want to dig into that, actually, because this is not, I think what you're talking about, like some of the hurdles and some of the stories you're sharing are commonplace for many people, not just from a race perspective, gender, just from working in the real world. We all face these moments where we need a voice. We need to find power somewhere in our life, in our careers. And a lot of times these are the turning points that people struggle with. We talk about love as a business strategy. A lot of it is trying to create environments that make every person feel empowered in that space, to be able to speak their mind, to have that truth come out and be honest and be themselves. And not every workplace affords that to people for one reason or the other. And I really wanted to have that conversation with you today on, really, in your mind, how do you take this superpower you have? How do you lead those around you through that power? And how do you help kind of, you say put people first. How do you help others with that?
One of the things, if my staff were here talking to you, they would tell you I insist that they speak up. I mean, if you're going to be on my team, I don't need a yes man. I can look in the mirror and talk to myself and nod my head. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And agree with myself all day long, but I'm not going to learn anything. And the workplace is about learning. It's not just about generating profit or completing a project. It's about learning. And the managers learn, the employees learn, everybody is learning. And in the middle of a project, I consider myself initially as a peer, even though my staff never sees me that way, right? But I'm believing that I'm a peer at that moment and we're all working it out. But I know that at the end of the day, when a decision has to be made, then I have to make the call if they don't want to make it or can't make it. But it's getting to know each person on their terms. I've always hated that phrase that says, check your personal problems at the door. How in the world is that possible if you just left a critical situation? You got to have space to at least vent it for a minute so we can set the expectations for you for the day, even if it means I need to say time for you to go home because you're not going to be able to engage with us. Or let's talk about how we help you. Not do your work for you, but help you keep being productive as you move through. But it's listening, it's insisting that people speak up. And so for me, every person on my team has a voice. No one is allowed to be silent. And everyone has to be open to that tough conversation, that harsh comment that they wish they didn't have to hear. I remember one session, staff meeting, I started the meeting with everyone would go around the table and said, I wish Diane would not, or I wish she would, because I wanted them to know if I can take the bullet, then because you're going to be next. They didn't know that. And I started off with my assistant, who has become the most outspoken person on the team, saying the thing that others probably would not say to me about being maybe a little harsh or a little curt or pushing too hard. But once she was able to share, others opened up and shared the things that I did that they did not like. And out of that, I learned that I needed to be more pleasant under pressure. We call it PUP now. So because when I'm under pressure, I'm not pleasant. I'm using as few words as possible. They're all nouns and verbs. That's it. You don't get any adjectives, adverbs. They're all nouns and verbs. Do this, don't do that. How about? But they it gives them the freedom to give it back, to talk to me person to person, because that was a requirement for me to work at this bank. Money was important, but I had two more things. One, the door had to be open. I didn't want to work in a place where I needed permission to talk to the CEO. I didn't want to have to go to my manager and that manager to get a meeting with the CEO. I wanted to be able to go and visit with the CEO when I felt like it, if he was willing to see me. And the other one, that my voice needed to be heard. You don't have to do what I say, but I want to be heard. I want to do what I am here to do, advise. We're all working in the advisory capacity because we don't own the place. So if that was important to me, then I thought that everyone around me should have that same liberty, that same thing. So that's critical. And for us to be at our best, we must be able to show up who we are, authentically who we are, every single day. But when we're not doing our best job or being our best work, we need to have people around us to say, that didn't look so great, or that wasn't good. Not out of competition, but out of caring. I care about you, so I'm going to tell you. And so that's how, every day, that is how it happens. I laugh, and I laugh at myself harder than others. Laugh because I'm goofy. But when I'm working really hard. But mostly, I am working really hard to make sure my staff is leveling up. Now they tell me, why do I keep raising the bar? And it's because when I was a kid, my dad, no matter what I did, it was always, you could do better. And I remember coming home with the straight A cards, being really happy. And my dad would go, do better next time. And I remember the last time he said that, my mother um, said, fool, she's got straight A's. What else do you want her to do? And and he laughed, and when I thought, I don't know what else I can do for him, but I realized he was still telling me that I could still push harder. And I do that to the team today. And one of the staff members brought it to my attention when I told her that story. She said, that's what you do to us. We don't get to revel in the success. So I'm working on that. I don't allow them the time they want to celebrate. I want to go, okay, what's next? How are we going to do this better? But I work as hard as a team. I'm willing to put in as many hours as it takes and working alongside them because it's fun and I love watching people grow.
I'm curious, has your team heard has all your team heard how your dad used to push you in that way? Does that context, not all of them?
Only a couple of them, only because we were in a conversation. It depends on when they catch me, right? On the one-on-one, what part of me they get that day. And that particular day, I don't know, was a conversation that reminded me of my dad because I was pushing this young staff member. It's like, now I get it. Because it's like, you gotta level up. Because life is always changing. You can't sit still.
I feel like that's the exact kind of story and context, especially just even in your intro you gave in the podcast today around how you were raised and how you grew up and how you came to be. That context plus hearing how your dad made you better. If I'm someone working under you and I feel like you're being hard on me, that very context helps me so much to understand where you're coming from. And it turns almost frustration into a feeling of being cared for and loved. If I understand that's where you're coming from, I think that's so powerful.
Well, I might tell others. Given what you just said, I might tell others. But I'm really hopeful that they all know that I care a lot about them because I work hard for them every day. I stand in the gap for my team. And like say, would you take a bullet for me at work? I take a bullet for them every day. While I expect a lot from them, I will allow no one to come to them and sort of be disrespectful or demean them or not give them the credit that's due. I will not allow that because everyone on my team works really hard. It may not turn out perfect, but I know that they've given me their best effort that day and we'll get better. So that's my job, to remove roadblocks and to protect them from unnecessary or rude criticism. Because my friends do that for me. My parents did that for me. And I think that's what you do when you're a manager. I never wanted kids, but that's what parenting must be like. So I like that I have grown kids, so they don't need all that care. I don't have to finance all that stuff. But you got to help them grow and learn and create an environment where it's safe to learn and make mistakes.
And your perspective is so important. It's honestly the reason I even do this podcast is because we talk about love as a business strategy, often missing the fact that love is different to different people. What we consider to be love in our life and our example of love and what love feels like and looks like is largely dependent on how we were raised, what we've experienced, how we interact with the world. And so hearing your father and your parents' love for you in one form and seeing that play out of love for you to the team is such an important connection to make. I don't think people always realize that what they expect in terms of love may not be the same as what others are trying to give. And that's a conversation we don't have enough around love as a business strategy because it can be so black and white sometimes when you say, oh, are you loving or are you not? And a lot of times our intentions are to love. Our actions may be interpreted differently.
Yeah, I think that's true. I had a conversation with one of my staff members some time ago, and she said, "Well, your love language is this," and was sort of about getting things done and handling and making sure people have what they need. She said, "Mine, her love language was about sort of talking and hugging and touching." And so how we love is different. But what's important is we must somehow make people aware of how we love. So
Yes.
they know when they are being loved in the way that I know how to do it. Because you can't make me love you how you want it. Because I have to do it how I know how to do it, and I will evolve over time as I work with you. But you got to give me enough grace to grow in love with you, because we grow in love together. It's not a separate thing. So,
Yeah.
but we got to give each other grace and patience to do that. And we don't give each other grace. We will slam the door, lock it, and throw away the key when you mess up. And that's not the way it should be.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like so many leaders I talk to, I always just have to start with the power and the simplicity of sharing your intentions. I think so often the simple part that gets unsaid or left unsaid is just starting conversation with, "Hey, Diane, here's what I'm bringing you in this conversation for. Here's my intent. Here's why I want to do it this way. Here's why it sets, it doesn't fix everything, but sometimes that step is skipped. And I think we jump
Yes.
straight to the work and everything is lost in translation and kind of the gaps are filled in by our own
Yeah.
imagination.
Most times that step is skipped. I can tell you for sure, as much as I think I do a lot of things right, I know for sure I don't do that 90% of the time. I don't say, now here's what we're going to do, and here's why I think we should do it this way, and let's talk it out. No, I'm saying, here's what we need, here's the outcome I need. Go. Only when there's a hiccup or a blip or a stumble that I have to step back and go, okay, listen, here's why I really asked you to do that. And here is how I was thinking the whole time it was going to work for you. I probably should have shared that in the beginning. It would have helped a lot. But you're thinking we're on the same page. You How I think about it is how everyone thinks about it, because that's who we are. And so me, definitely, everyone clearly thinks the way I do. So I'm always thinking that why couldn't you see that? It's so evident to me. But the truth is, just because we all have two eyes to see, we don't all see the same. Our perception and how we discern things is so different because we're seeing through the eyes of our past. We're seeing from the eyes of our past experiences, not of today. Because I only have one of these lenses. I see, but it's all the stuff that you don't see that comes with my vision.
It's
So,
powerful.
yeah, people are hard. We seem simple, but people are hard when we don't take the time to relax into each other, right? It's relaxing into each other.
You mentioned earlier this idea of having your door open. And I'm curious what advice you have for, I stumble upon this a lot and I'm guilty of this myself, where you have every intention of wanting your team and those around you to be honest and come to you for help and so you can support. And so you have this open door, you know, metaphorically or literally policy. And at least in my experience, I desired that deeply, and I'd open my door and nobody would walk through it. And I don't know if you've experienced that or if you've had people who, you know, what advice would you give to people who like, what other steps have you taken to get people to walk through that door, to actually get to a point where they are willing or can trust to come to you with bad news and with help and with weaknesses?
Every person has to make a real concerted effort to be known. You must be vulnerable with the other person. In order for me to trust you, you need to show trust. And that is not easy. Sometimes as managers, we think we're this, I don't know, superhuman. But people want to know that we're all the same. We're all the same. What might be different, our numbers, our paychecks are different. But past our paychecks and actually we're the same. So stopping by a desk and passing through and saying good morning, or commenting on something, or asking someone about a weekend, or sharing something about yourself makes you more human to the other person. And when you reveal a mistake that you made, that shows that I'm not perfect. And when you ask for advice from your staff members, that shows that you're not perfect. And when they show up at your door, you must smile and welcome them in, and don't start working on your phone or on your computer while they're talking to you. Stop and listen. And by all means, ask them a couple of questions about themselves, not just about the work. Like, how are you? Right? So when new people join, and I sometimes ask how they are, they immediately start telling me about the work. I said, that's great, but really tell me about you. How are you doing? Because how is that working? Then you can tell me about the work. Because if you're not okay, the work is probably not okay. So it's work. It's an effort to say, I want to know you. And I am really grateful that all of my direct staff have been with me for at least 5 years, and they know me. I feel like they really know me. And my assistant would sometimes tell them when was a good time to come by to see me. Like, this is not a good time. You should come back later. So that's knowing the person that you're working with, and you can tell others, yeah, not a good time. She might say yes, but this is not a good time. Or they can look at me and say something is wrong. Tell you want to talk about it, because this is where I spend a lot of my time with these people doing this work. And it is leaning in and saying, we're all in this together. We are all in this together. We're all just people. If a paycheck makes you think I'm smarter than you are, we have a problem. Because a paycheck means I got somewhere faster than you. I don't know. Or somebody gave me I don't know. But it's a paycheck. Or my office. It's geography. The real stuff is what's inside of us, and you have to just lean into people and be goofy with them, and it reveals something about you that if they go tell someone else, it's not going to kill you. You may not have wanted them to tell it, but it's okay. You're not going to die from it. Nobody's ever died from embarrassment. It'll be okay.
You come close, but
yeah, but you won't die.
Not quite.
You'll resuscitate, and you'll be back at it.
Well, Diane, I really appreciate this conversation, this perspective, and you sharing so much about yourself and your story. It's meant a lot to me, and I think it's helpful to continue. Like I mentioned, the purpose of this podcast is to keep giving perspectives and stories from various people across the different practices and positions, and yours is truly unique and important. So thank you for sharing that today.
It's my pleasure, and I think everyone will want to talk to you. You're just cool radio voice, so don't cut this out. This is a real great voice, and I might tell you more things than you want to know because it's such a relaxing voice. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you to the listeners. As always, we appreciate you taking the time to listen. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope you're checking out our book, Love is a Business Strategy. Still there, still kicking. And we hope you're subscribing and rating and leaving feedback, all those good things, telling your friends, because we love doing this. And we hope you keep coming back and listening. And Diane, I hope you keep practicing your pleasant under pressure philosophy. Maybe I'll talk to some of your team members and see if you're succeeding in that or not. I'll hear from them.
Please do.
I'll let you know. Right. I'll give you that direct feedback. But with that, everybody have a great week, and we'll see you next week.